The Sweetness of Sugar Grove, or Matthew 25:40-41, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Last night, an older man came into the Shell gas station where I work, and he asked if it might be all right for him to come in from the cold. I told the hunched, slightly purpled gentleman that we weren't usually allowed to have people to come in and just loiter without making any purchases to speak of. However, at the falling of his shoulders and the bowing in defeat of his head, I couldn't help but let him come in anyway. It was just too cold outside for him to just stand out there in the elements, left to nature in his Carhartt jacket, tattered and dirtied white Walmart brand sneakers that were trying to masquerade as New Balances, and his worn black Wranglers. Hell, he didn't have gloves, a scarf, a hat, or any other winter gear to help him weather the unusually frigid South Arkansas winter air. He came inside and began to talk. And talk. And, you guessed it, talk. The little old man talked perpetually, incessantly. He asked me my name. I told him, Jeannie. After which, he kept facing me and calling me Melissa. This name seemed to soothe and comfort him, so I didn't correct him. Well, at least not after the first 10 times. 10 corrections are more than enough. While he was Melissa-ing me, he mumbled a cyclical mantra of sorts, begging me to find 4 serial numbers on this one particular dollar bill he had to see if it was counterfeit, made by the supercomputers he made in his youth and that were now the actual overlords there in the White House. I did know that IBM ruled the US, right? He said a lot more things. He addressed logical fallacies in the news reports, evidence of dumbing down of the populace due to fluorinated water. He explained why America was no longer the greatest nation on Earth. We left many of our best scientists on the moon. He expounded on the increasing rise of nationalism. Hitler never died. He'd been holed up in the Andes all this time, believe it or not. He told me why he was so very lonely. He just couldn't keep it together after his wife Amy, who was quite beautiful with auburn hair and bright blue eyes, and their child Susan, a spitting image of her mother but in small cherub form, died in a fire. I asked the little old man his name and if, by any miracle, he lived relatively close to the Shell. He answered, "My name's Gerald Aaron Rodenhouse II, and I live just around the corner. I think. Dunno if I can find it, though." Upon hearing his name, I was touched. Someone had loved this man. I know, I shouldn't make assumptions based on someone's outward appearance, and maybe not even based upon their rants. But hearing the second part of his name meant that his father, upon little Gerald's birth, must have been beaming with pride and overflowing with how blessed he was to have a son to carry his own name well into the future. Surely, stunning Amy and angelic Susan loved him too. I choked back the emotional leanings and said, "Well, Gerald, it's much too cold for you to be walking around this late. It's around 10 degrees outside. Did you know that? And the wind chill is well below freezing. Do you need a ride somewhere? Is there anything I can do to help you find your house? I can't leave the store unattended, but I can call one of my friends or maybe just find a ride for you somehow else. What do you think?" Gerald stopped his fidgeting for the first time since he'd entered the store, going quite still. He breathed in and out slowly, closing his eyes and seeming to me that he was getting ready to perform some sort of astounding trick or a feat of great strength or concentration. "No, I'd have to be the one to find it, Other people can't really find it. Just me. I don't know, I don't know where it is, you see, 'cause it moves, you see? You see?" He then went on to relate to me the precise moment and method of his deification. At 36, after Amy and Susan had left him, he came upon a man that had traveled back from the future to tell Gerald just how important his contributions to the world would turn out to be. Gerald and the man spent about 3 days together, sharing tea and little baked treats, before Gerald realized the man was trying to slowly poison him. Upon confronting the time traveler, the man admitted that he wanted his family to have a better life by his having invented and doing the things that Gerald was supposed to eventually invent and do. Gerald, to save his own life and his own future, and even the history of the whole wide world, killed this man. The temptation from the time machine being right there was too strong, though. Gerald hopped in, fiddled with some of the toggles, and off he went to explore time. Now, this still doesn't quite explain how he became a god. An odd claim in general, but odder still from someone saying, "God bless you," and "Christ be with you," every fifth breath. Apparently, amid his travels, he accidentally toggled too far this way or that, and he ended up in the days of the dinosaurs and early man. Apparently, ancient hominids worshipped dinosaurs because, unlike what stupid paleontologists try to tell us these days, these beasts were gods on Earth. While taking his initial hikes around this ancient world after hiding his time machine, Gerald had a confrontation with some of the natives who wanted to feed him to their god Krine. He fought back, not allowing himself to be tied to a stake. Amid the scuffle, a high-pitched screech call echoed downward, and Gerald realized that a flying dinosaur, one of them pterodactyls, was coming down from the sky toward them all. The people all bowed and cowered, and Gerald quickly figured out that this beast was Krine. Rather than grovel, he picked up some of the sharpened sticks that were around from this little sacrificing party, and he did battle with Krine. Gerald, being a superior fighter when he was younger, killed this god, thus becoming a god himself. The people wanted to worship and revere him, but instead he explained to them that these beasts were there for meat and skins and left them all to their own devices after grabbing a few of the dead god's teeth for trophies. By the end of that tale, Gerald was wild-eyed and heaving from his excitement, gasping for breath, as if he'd not breathed in during the entire recitation. He apologized for his unseemly breathing, and he apologized that he couldn't finish the story and let me know that, some other time, we'd have to talk about how he took some of Krine's cells to clone them for the government, empowering the CIA to finally win the Cold War. "The gods are coming," he whispered in gravel and sandstone, barely audible to me. "And when they come, everything is gonna change. Be ready, Melissa." My job at the Shell station just off I-40 affords me a lot of conversations with a lot of interesting people. But the eeriest part of Gerald's stories was they were different somehow. I've talked to alcoholics, and coke fiends, and crackheads, and needle junkies, and meth heads, and they all, almost to a man or a woman, invent words and conjure up fantastical events to tell exaggerated accounts of their lives and exploits. These will, of course, be completely made up, torn from utter whole cloth. Even the words themselves won't, don't, or can't exist, and that does not bode well for those stories. Not with Gerald. He was lucid. His narratives were keen. He mentioned some details about people in the town that I have heard confirmed elsewhere, from newspapers, town meetings, and more reputable sources. Even more shockingly, he mentioned precise dates in history, and those dates seemed legitimate. Spot on. He just seemed to be unsure of where he was and what was happening in this moment. I finally got around to shaking my head and coming back out of my odd delirium inspired by Gerald, and I remembered my training that Shell had given me for precisely this situation. The policy was that, if confronted with a vagrant, you call the cops for what many departments label a twilight alert or a gray alert. or a seniors alert. What this does is alert the authorities that an elderly individual is in need of help and might or might not be confused. So, call I did, hoping that I could help Gerald out and get him somewhere warm.
Sugar Grove Police Department.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Jeannie Jethart, and I work at the Shell right off of I-40, near the ConAgra plant. Right now, I have an older man here with me in the station, and he seems to be very confused. It's against Shell policy, but I brought him in here with me because I honestly think he was just wandering aimlessly in the cold, and I was worried about him.
So, is this an emergency? Has he threatened you? Do you need us to send an officer?
No. He seems very kind, very gentle, very compliant. He listens to my instructions just fine, and we're actually having a great conversation, but when I asked him where he lived, he told me he lived around the corner, and as you well know, there are no houses out this way. It's all stores and interstate. Is there any way we can get him a ride to his home, or figure out if he has a home, or get him some food? Something?
Ma'am, is he in black jeans, white shoes, and a brown Carhartt?
Yes, actually, that's him. Has someone reported him missing? That question was met with mumbled chatting between the dispatcher and whoever was sitting near her. I thought I heard some chuckling through the muffled speech.
Oh, my, ma'am. We know exactly who you're talking about. It just took a few minutes for us to put two and two together. Crazy Gerald there has been run out of 2 businesses already tonight in the span of about an hour. It is his nightly tradition. I'll dispatch someone to come take him right out of there. Don't you worry your pretty little head.
What? No. Really, it's okay. Everything is just fine. You know what? Never mind. Wait, so just to be clear, he does not have a home.
Gerald? Oh, no, sorry, but yeah, no, sugar. He's homeless without a friend in the world.
Well, are there not some shelters where he could stay or eat or something?
Round here? No. You know that? Now, please do just call us right back if you want us to get rid of him for you. I promise you'll get tired of those dipshit stories of his. You have a good night.
I didn't even get to say thank you to the persnickety dispatcher. The line went dead, and once more, I was alone with Gerald Aaron Roddenhouse II. So, that's what happens when you call SGPD for one of those so-called twilight alerts, or gray alerts, or senior alerts. What a joke. What a travesty. Gerald, having overheard my consternation on the phone, was even more fidgety. I assume this was because he thought he was about to get to deal with the police for the 3rd time that evening. I walked back around the counter, and I put my hand on his shoulder, smiling at him. The nervous movement decreased just a scotch, and then I went ahead over to the rack holding our massive 64-ounce jugs for truckers. I scooped one up, walked over to the coffee machine, and filled it. I then grabbed some apples and bananas from our fresh fruit baskets, a handful of assorted Little Debbie baked treats, and a few hand warmers. I took this armload over to the register and began to ring it all up. Melissa, you know that I just can't afford that, right? Gerald, this is on the house, on me. Don't you worry about it. Once I'd rung myself up and paid, I called my mother. In a matter of 15 minutes, she was there with one of my old backpacks and one of the innumerable beat-up blankets that never left our closet in the family home. She and I packed all of the food and blankets into my old blue Jansport, and I handed the cup of coffee to Gerald. Okay, buddy. You're going to go with my mom, and she's going to take you somewhere warm where you can stay, at least for the next night or 2. Don't you worry one bit about money. Everything is covered. And if anyone tries to bully you at the motel, you just call us. We are leaving our number with both you and the front desk, okay? What can I say? My Southern Baptist upbringing demanded that I take in the least of them, right? Guess that would mean that the SGPD will be asked to depart in eternal fire in in that case. Ha! Sounded appropriate in the moment anyway. Gerald was clearly tearing up and unable to say much of anything. I gave him a huge hug and watched as my mother ushered him out to our red and white tank that GMC called a safari. Taillights, and he was gone. That was 9 months ago now. I've not seen Gerald since then. My mom and I tried to check up on him after the 3 days of prepaid hotel ran out, but he'd apparently left midway through paid day 2. The temperature continued to drop for the remainder of the relatively short Arkansan winter, and I couldn't help but think of Gerald as the wind would lash at me while I ran errands, did chores, or whatever other mundane mess that sent me out into the weather. A part of me wants to believe that he really was a time traveler, or a god, or an angel of sorts. In fact, I hope and pray he was one of the 3. Hell, all 3 at the same time. I hope that, God willing I get there, when I hit 70, a funny little man will approach me and thank me heartily for my kindness. Or, I'll have a revelation later in life from a deity in a Carhartt jacket. Or, when I do kick the bucket and head up to the pearly gates, Christ himself will come and give me a fidgety hug, thanking me for taking care of him on that cold winter night. But that's just optimism, and that Southern Baptist upbringing chiming in again, huh?
Let kindness burn a hole in my pride. Let charity never linger too long in my hand. When the poor are scorned by those with more, let me stand.
Thank you for listening to The Sweetness of Sugar Grove, or Matthew 25:40-41, a short story by me, Jared I. McGee. The backing track for this story is an original composition, written and performed by David Ezel. The second piece Mr. Ezel has written specifically and exclusively for a prose short story. David Ezel is a devoted father, a devoted creator, and a devoted friend of the Republic, not to mention an extremely talented musician. As I have noted before, long ago in our heyday, he and I used to make some pretty good music together. His previous project was a podcast called Dad Hacks, where he gave voice to a community of dads who have learned the tips and shortcuts of parenting and now want to share that with any and all parents, grandparents, step-parents, or guardians that find themselves struggling in the midst of the parenting grind. To find out more about Dad Hacks, you can find them at Dad Hacks Podcast on Facebook and under Dad Hacks on iTunes, Blueberry, Stitcher, Google Play, and other similar podcast catchers. He is currently working on a new podcast, which I'm sure I'll tell everyone about in the very near future. Moreover, he's working on other musical projects that I'll probably give voice to as well. You will hopefully continue to hear more music from Mr. Ezel behind my stories right here, sooner than later. In the meantime, stick around for Lomar, an intriguing quasi-mystery set in a rural Filipino community.
Darkness falls and fills the night. The morning sun will light the sky. Though darkness falls and fills the night, the morning sun will rise. Though darkness falls and fills the night, the morning sun will light the sky. The morning sun will rise. The morning sun will rise. The morning sun will rise. rise, the morning sun.